So how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you.
So, sir, first of all, I would like to ask you that we hear a lot of buzz around performance management these days, but what, according to you, performance management actually is?
Performance management, according to me, is a constant dialogue between a supervisor and his or her team member to evaluate, to track and monitor the progress of a goal which has been set and mutually agreed between the appraiser and the appraisee. So it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing dialogue between the supervisor and his or her reporting subordinate.
Right. So, sir, as you said that it is an ongoing process between the reporting manager and the reportee. Do you think that it is very important that performance management should be now changed more towards the continuous platform instead of making it a year-end or just a one-time appraisal thing or something like that?
I strongly hold the view that it should not be an annual one-off exercise.
Mm-hmm.
However, to set a process in place, depending on the nature and maturity of the organization, it should have a defined periodicity, which ideally should be a quarter or 6 months, and not certainly one at the end of 1 year, because an employee should have a constant feedback mechanism to figure out the rate of progress of his or her agreed goal for the particular year.
Right. So, sir, based on that, would you like to discuss some of the, the key gaps which are prevalent in the current industry regarding the performance management practices, or, the things which need improvement in terms of performance management?
One is, first of all, to think that performance management is only a measurement of goals and their levels of achievement. I feel that performance management is a much more comprehensive and a broader concept, which includes not only measurement of the achievement levels of the mutually agreed goals, but it also should take into account the competencies which an employee demonstrates at his or her workplace to achieve those goals. And thirdly, another element which should be very closely evaluated by an organization is the demonstration of the values of the organization, or to what extent the employee practices the values of the organization. So it's like a 360 degrees approach where an employee's performance is not only measured by the quantifiable goals and objectives, but also by the demonstration of the competencies, behavioral competencies required for a particular job, and thirdly, by the demonstration of the company values, which every employee is expected to demonstrate.
Right. So, sir, as you said that, about the competencies, so do you think that performance management is also a, medium by which not only the, the performance of the organization as a whole is improved or, goes towards a betterment, but also it also is a path by which an employee can, develop themselves, be a better version of themselves?
Performance management is, first of all, performance appraisal is a part of the performance management process. Right?
Right.
So, performance management is more widely encompassing, of which appraisal is only a subset. Appraiser typically is an appraisal or an evaluation of the achievement of goals and objectives. The development part of it is another subset of the performance management process, where an employee and his or her supervisor gets into a performance conversation or performance dialogue into why a particular achievement or non-achievement has happened, right? And what he or she needs to do to improve that level of performance. It can be a deficiency in the capability of the individual.
Right.
It may be due to lack of support from the organization. It may be due to environmental reasons. So, therefore, it is very important that this performance dialogue takes place, because this enables an employee to look at his or her shortcomings and mutually discuss with the supervisor in terms of what are the development plans or what, that he or she needs to adhere to improve his or her capability so that he or she can achieve the goals. So it is, one is the growth element of the performance management process. The first element, as I said, is the measurement of, it's a database, fact-driven, data-driven measurement of goals and objectives. The second element is a growth element, where the individual gets into a conversation with the organization in order to develop his or her capability, which in turn contributes to the professional growth of the individual within the organization.
Right, absolutely. So, sir, another thing which I would like to ask you is, since you talked about, the feedback process that persists in an organization, do you think that it is important to, formalize the entire feedback process so that the process becomes more effective and wholesome in nature?
Yes, the feedback process cannot, because informal feedback happens always, right?
Yes.
That's a constant process through an everyday interaction. But yes, it's very important to have a formal feedback mechanism during the quarterly or the half-yearly dialogue, wherein the supervisor shares with him or her the basic feedback about how the quarter or the other half has gone. And then it should be documented with a clear action plan for the remaining part of the year. So that there is no ambiguity in understanding of what transpired in the conversation and what is the way forward.
Right, absolutely. So, sir, would you like to share any, any key features that you think a feedback tool and feedback process must have in order to make it very effective in an organization?
The first and foremost, I think, is the faith and belief of the employee in the organizational performance management process. It should not be seen as a fault-finding process. Yes, there is certainly an element of evaluation in it. There is an element of judgment in it in terms of the levels of performance. But it should also be seen as a constructive process which enables not only the individual but also the organization to grow. So there has to be a lot of faith on the process. The process should be transparent. It should be data-driven, it should be fact-driven, and it should be based on tangible goals which are mutually agreed and not driven from the top and thrusted on the people below. So it has to be co-created and co-evolved in a bottom-up approach, so there is ownership and accountability of the goals. Right. So there has to be one is, as I said, objectivity. Second is, it should be transparent in terms of, if days of confidential reports have gone, so now it is more of technology-driven performance management system on various platforms, be it the SuccessFactors of SAP or of any other indigenously built software, where people can actually see what goals have been mutually agreed upon and how is the tracking happening, so that there is quantifiable data based on which objective decisions are taken and minimum subjectivity is applied in the evaluation process.
Right. Absolutely. So another thing which I would like to know your opinion, sir, is that, as you said, that giving constructive feedback is very important. Objectifying the feedbacks are very important. You know, so sometimes we see that negative feedbacks are seen in a bad light because most people are like not ready to accept it in a ready way. So do you think that there are any best practices in terms of, how negative feedback should be approached in an organization, or whether there should be any training or specific, practices that should be done so that the negative feedback are more readily acceptable by the employees?
The first and foremost thing is, as I said, as a response to your previous question is, trust and faith on the organizational system. That this process or this system is not there to find faults in me or to victimize me or to pull me down.
Right.
Once that credibility of the system is established, a large part of the battle is won. Right? So, and there has to be a very, a very structured way of coaching and training the managers or giving feedback, because as it rightly said, giving feedback is a very critical element of the success of a performance management process.
Right.
How you give the feedback creates a lot of trust or creates a lot of mistrust. A lot of animosity creates a lot of acceptance.
Right.
So, managers and supervisors have to be sensitized how to provide feedback to their appraisees. Now, the fact is that negative feedback, most of the cases our managers in India or globally, we as human beings, we try to avoid. We always try to tell the good things, be it in our normal day-to-day lives or be it in our organizational lives. We prefer being the messenger of good things.
Right.
We don't prefer as human beings to say the negative or the bad things to anyone, be it our family members or be it to an employee within the organization. So there's an inherent discomfort within all of us. The degree may vary from one to the other. We don't enjoy doing it. Right? But there are some people who get a sadistic pleasure doing it also.
Yes.
But typically, managers should be surprised at how a person may respond or react to a negative feedback. Do we give it as a negative feedback, or do we give it as a feedback which creates a feeling within the employee that this is for my betterment? Do I tell him or her that you did a bad job, or do I tell him or her that you could have done better? You did a good job, but you could have done better. So how we communicate our message is very, very important.
Right.
Right? So even if you have to tell something negative, or if you have to say something which is not very palatable or pleasant to hear to an employee in terms of the grading that he expects, if you would like to give him a lower grade, or you are not going to give him a promotion, or you are citing some improvement areas, how do you package it is very, very important. You have to mentally prepare him or her to give this sort of a communication. Typically, one should never give a negative communication right at the beginning of a conversation.
Right.
But that typically shuts out the appraisee or the person on the other side from hearing even the positives when they come in later, because he's already thinking about the negatives.
Right.
Right? So a person, when he or she sits for an interview or sits for an appraisal interview or a discussion, he or she knows that my performance will now get discussed. And in this process, he or she expects that his or her manager or boss will also share some positives along with the negatives, because everybody knows that some negatives he or she will hear from the boss.
Right.
But then would typically like to hear the positives first, because that sets up the process and makes the environment more congenial and more accepting. Otherwise, a person becomes very closed and defensive if you talk that negative things right at the beginning.
Right. Yes, absolutely, sir. Whatever you said, delivering the negative feedback after going through the positive feedback will, make it more acceptable to the employee, and they will consider it more as a developmental opportunity rather than being defensive, as you said. Which is I feel like which is the main purpose of giving the negative feedback, because it is sort of a developmental feedback, right? The negative is not negative in that sense, it is the developmental feedback. So giving it in a right time and in a right way, as you said, will actually make the employee or the appraisee understand that yes, this is for my own development and not for humiliating me or embarrassing me.
And to add to this, whatever feedback we give to our employees, be it positive or negative, it has to be data-based and fact-driven, because even when you give feedback about a demonstration of a competency or a behavior, you should be able to narrate with incidents, which substantiates your point of view. No point telling a person that you are not you don't have a high interpersonal orientation, or you don't have customer orientation, or you don't have leadership skills. No. Making such blanket statements will not go down well with people, because unless you substantiate them with incidents which you have noticed over a period of time. One incident cannot prove that a person does not have a particular behavioral competency or does not demonstrate it.
Right.
So you should typically follow a critical incidents diary, wherein you should be in a position to play it back to your employees or your immediate team members that, okay, this is the feedback, you've done this well. Why I'm saying you've done this well is because of X, Y, Z reasons. And you have not done this well, or I want you to improve further, is because these are the shortcomings which I have observed. But while all this process happens, it is very important that the initial part of the performance dialogue does not happen with the appraiser speaking. It is the first 15 minutes, it should be appraisees' feelings or experiences over the 6 months or 1 year, the time frame which you are going to discuss. How he or she has felt, how he or she is in terms of delivering the goals, obstacles in terms of delivering the goals. Does he or she feel that, okay, I could have done this better? So this way, you're actually enabling the appraisee to share his or her pent-up emotions, which he or she may not always get a chance to share with the appraiser.
Right.
By this time, when you get into the dialogue, you would have already brought the appraisee onto a platform where he or she is more willing to listen to you or accept whatever feedback you give to him or her.
Right, absolutely. Making it about the appraisee during the starting of the feedback period, and after that coming to the the discussion.
Yeah, then you communicate. First hear him or her out.
Yes,
that gives a lot of cues.
Yes.
Then you start talking to him or her about the various goals based on data, based on KPIs, based on the various objectives that were set mutually.
And sir, the last thing that I would like to ask you is how in your organization you are managing the performance of the employees, and how is how the feedback is integrated into the performance management in your organization?
First and foremost, we have adopted the business balance scorecard approach, wherein all the goals are typically divided into 4 quadrants. It's financial, customer, operations, and learning and development. So every individual employee has to have goals in these quadrants. Now, these are typically what we call the business balance scorecard approach, and they are first of all a cascading effect of the corporate scorecard, which the joint managing director and the chairman and managing director co-own. And then it's percolated down to the next level, which is with the management committee level, and then it goes down to the last mile, depending on the roles they play. The budget numbers are typically evolved from the bottom, and then gets ratified at the top, and then it gets plugged into the KPIs, into the KRAs, and then gets cascaded down.
Right.
So That way there is a co-ownership of all the goals across the organization. Now, then we have an automated system. We have an ERP based on which goals get uploaded in the system, and there is we have launched a 6-monthly feedback system, review mechanism, during which no ratings are given, only a monitoring is done or a tracking is done in terms of goal achievement. Competencies are usually not discussed at that point in time. Competencies are only discussed at the end of the year during the annual appraisal process. Right? The feedback mechanism is it's a cultural thing. We are constantly, educating and counseling our managers and telling them how to do it. Not that we are very satisfied with what all our managers do in terms of communicating back to the employees, because it often happens that the buck is passed on to the HR, because they say that it's HR who is done, because we follow a bell curve system of performance rating moderation. Therefore, what typically happens is we are constantly in the process of counseling, coaching our managers to become HR managers, right? Because they are the actual owners, custodians of their people. I wouldn't use the word owners. Custodians of their people in terms of their performance, their growth, everything. HR is only an enabler and facilitator of the process. So we are constantly coaching them, we are encouraging them. Yes, we do get feedbacks about managers washing their hands off, but yes, it's a constant process, and we are trying to evolve this entire performance dialogue, constant conversation with our leadership team and the operational leadership.
So it is an evolving process. Performance management in general is an evolving process, right?
It's a cultural process, because the organization and the entire ecosystem of the organization should have faith on the performance management framework of the organization. It is based on the basic values of the organization. It is based on the fundamentals of the organization of trust, faith, adherence to values, core values of the company. So that is a process which takes its own time to evolve and institutionalize.
It takes some time. Yes. So thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and participating in this TopTalk discussion with me. The points that you shared, like starting from making the performance review system not yearly but quarterly or for 6 months, or making the feedback about the beginning of the feedback about the feelings of the appraisee and not the person who is giving the appraisal or reviewing it, and all the other thing about the evaluation and the feedback process. It was very enriching and enlightening, and it was very refreshing to hear someone address the gaps and everything that goes on in the industry, and also give suggestions and recommendations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Bye.